I guess I should start by introducing myself. I often start chatting and forget that piece. My name is Jackie Wills. My pronouns are she, her, elle. I've been with VAC most of my public service career. I'm the Executive Inclusion Officer, and I am so happy to see this forum happening. I'm really pleased to be your MC. So to begin the forum, I would like to welcome Elder Annie St. George. Elder Annie St. George is a well-known traditional elder of Algonquin territory, born and raised on the Kitigan-Zibi Reserve near Maniwaki. We are delighted to have Elder Annie here today to lead us in an opening prayer.
Annie Smith St. George, Ishquanaquad, Nitikash, Kitigan Zibi Ojiba. The kitchen Gemino Mabak Kakina Equawan and Ninewa Wasunch Manoko. Kitigan Isha Shikanishnabi Algonkineki Mega. I'm Annie Smith St. George, Kishquanaquad, and I was born and raised in Kitigan Zibi. And I welcome you all from the Algonquin territory, the territory where my ancestors and my great-grandparents originated from, on this Kichisibi River area from Gatineau to Ottawa to the large territory of the Algonquin Nation. I welcome you this morning. Bienvenue sur le grand territoire, le territoire algonquin, le territoire Anishinaabe. Ça me fait plaisir de vous accueillir sur ce territoire. Depuis des siècles, mes ancêtres, mes arrière-grand-mères, arrière-arrière, plusieurs générations, ils ont demeuré dans la région d'Ottawa et Gatineau, Ontario et Gatineau, une partie de l'Ontario et une partie du Québec. Et ça fait plaisir de vous accueillir. This morning, we'll take a moment. Ce matin, on va prendre un moment de pensée, un pensée pour les seuls qui souffrent, les enfants à Laval qui ont été frappés par un choc émotif hier quand un autobus a rentré dans une garderie. Take a moment. Yesterday in Laval, Quebec, a bus ran into a daycare center. Little babies of 4 years old and 5 died. And it is a harsh moment. Everybody went into shock. 2 died, 2 little ones died, 2 little babies died. Reasons unknown. Parents are in grief, fear, and traumatic. They're in a post-traumatic, they're now. Also the ones that are in Turkey and Syria and all over the world who are living and experiencing grief, severe grief after major earthquakes, are bring our thoughts and our minds and prayers to them so that they may have the strength to continue to walk and they may have a strength to be able to do their duties. As we take this moment of silence, 1 minute, it's to send our prayers and our good energies off to them. Miigwech. Good. Merci. Thank you. Now, when we on the territory, as I light the fire and I greet the people, and in remembrance of the one that passed over during the wars. And today we're talking about issues of equality. History with our people have also, they have attended wars with the rest of the Canadians. Two of my uncles went to the First or Second World War in the 1800s. I think it was first. They're my great uncles, great uncles. One of them, they died there, and they're still, I think, over there. My great grandmother lost two boys during this war. Back in the day, the indigenous people, especially women, was placed in as nurses. They were not able to fight like today or have frontline or do the work that we're doing today. The equal gender was they had to become nurses. I had cousins who went to the war too, Second World War. Older cousins. They were not entitled. Back in the day, being indigenous, being a native person, we had to enfranchise. Enfranchise means they had to sell the rights to be able to attend the war. They had to give up their identity. Just like the women who married a Métis or a non-Aboriginal person was removed from the reserve. The Bill C-31. In 1985, there was corrective measures towards these unjust moments. The enfranchisement too was included in this process, as we Indigenous people were not able before in the 50s and in the 60s, even 70s. We were not able to go to war unless we had to sell our rights, our identity. We became nobody when you sold your right or they removed you because of unjust. You had no identity. I was neither native, I was neither an indigenous person, woman, nor was I any other nation. I was nobody in my country. The identity was removed from me. When we come to equal equality here, we must reflect back of our ancestors. And so we take that moment, come together, and we start with a new beginning of reconciliation. There's a hand up. The host, do I have a problem? Does everybody hear me?
You are fine, Annie. Thank you.
Okay. We have to do reconciliation. Reconciliation is a call to action. It's a big word because it's not only from the residential schools, but way before that, especially in the area you're in. As we start anything, even what I'm doing today. My ancestors, my great-grandmother, my father even, at my father's level, wasn't able to smudge, wasn't able to do things. They'd be put into prison. But today, I have the opportunity to carry on their voices. Those that cannot speak anymore. And I'm grateful for that. And when we start anything, a forum, a gathering of any kind, we always light the fire with a smudge, a purification, so that we have a clear mind. And so that we clean, pass over our eyes so that we can see clear. So that we pass a smudge over our ears so we can hear clearly. And to be able to speak in a good way. And as we pass it over to our hearts, just open up our hearts, our feelings for others, and to understand the others, not only through the mind, but also opening their heart up, so that we can be able to receive information in a good way. With the discussions that's going to go on, that is what smudging ceremony is all about, is to be able to clean ourselves of yesterday, and that we start off in a new day. We always say thank you. On dit toujours merci pour tout ce qu'on a aujourd'hui. Tujamigwach, tujamanito, anjagizas, idibigizas, igushak, naugatek, shishak. Ekaya gigonzak. Nebigushak, kakinakuch, yega, keeping chikawan on jijojoiki. Ekayaka, yaguch, nibi. Tujamigwach, or Jesaigan, Kisaigan. Jiwanj, Jesaigan, Pasindi. Ekayaka kinakiki at all mashkikiwan. Minibi, Toden, Shkabewan, Mashkikiwan, Egypt. Okay. Ekakinawi was sunchma. Ujami Guachunjaka. Ekwawan, Niwa Kusunja. Regiment Jamanido, the widow come Kakinawi was sunchma. Okay. Innistator, make a dumb dogs with. Nishnabe, the mothers would make a Je remercie le Créateur. I thank the Creator for the sun that rises. It's a new day, new beginning for all of us. C'est une nouvelle journée, un nouvel commencement d'ailleurs. Chaque jour. Aussi la lune qui influence l'eau, les lacs, les rivières et l'océan. Aussi la femme qui donne la vie aux êtres. Pour les femmes qui donnent la vie, naître un enfant. Et à partir de nous, on est aussi à partir des mouvements scellés, l'eau scellée dans notre corps, l'influence de la lune chez l'être humain aussi. Toutes les étoiles, les vastes étoiles, enormous. The sky is so big, huge, beautiful. All the bird life, toutes les oiseaux, ça parle. Les oiseaux qui donnent leur vie, qu'on peut nourrir notre corps. Les quatre pattes, toutes the four-legged, les oignons, les chevreuils, et tous les animaux qui donnent leur vie pour nous autres. On peut nourrir notre corps. Et les seuls qui demeurent aussi qui vivent dans l'eau, the ones that live in the waters as well, the four-legged miigwech. Also for the fish world, from the salt water to the Grand Rivière, the GCB, the big river, and also l'océan, the oceans, and all the vast water of the ocean, the undersea that man has not experienced yet, a mystery, and all the mammals. Miigwech for the food we eat today, the water that we're still able to drink, the vegetation, the trees, the air we breathe, the flora fortress, the air circulates so that we have fresh air, the rain, the snow, everything we have, the medicines we use, everything that we have on earth, we use, even the metals we use, everything comes from Mother Earth. Thank the Creator for all the gifts that we have on earth for us. Je remercie Createur pour tous les cadeaux de la vie et tout ce qu'on a sur terre, pour juste pour nous autres. Je remercie le Créateur pour toutes nous autres ici, sur ce forum-là, au-dessus de 133 personnes. Chacun de vous, vous êtes la touche finale. All of us, we are the final touch of humankind. The beauty and the beauty in his garden, the beauty dans le jardin de la terre, l'être humain. Chaque fleur dans un jardin en poterie, chaque pétale de fleur, de rose, est pas pareil. Each flower in a garden of roses is not the same size. We are the similar. We come in different colors, different cultures, different environments, different hair, different ways. I thank the Creator for this great gift, because if there was only one tree, one flower, it'd be boring. S'il y avait seulement une fleur ou un arbre, ce serait, puis juste une personne, une culture, ce serait pas intéressant. En étant qu'on ait plusieurs cultures, plusieurs environnements, plusieurs classes, ça fait la beauté et la belle communication. That's what gives the nice culture, different cultures. That's the beauty of this garden, the earth. The only earth, the only Mother Earth that we know of. There is no other one so far we have found. That is the only one that is so precious to us. As we women are so connected to that earth. We women are the water carriers. We women are strong. We women too are included in this circle. All of us, all together. We women honor, because man honors Mother Earth. We have to start honoring Mother Earth. She's suffering. And we women could help in that way too. Miigwech. Thank you. Have a nice day, and I will see you on your next meeting in person this time. And I will be doing a bit of history, a little bit more history on the unjust, and what is maybe to look, maybe give a few food for thought so that the organization could move forward in a good direction with reconciliation and looking at the indigenous ways. Miigwech to all of you. I am very honored to be here today, be able to open up the session.
Thank you so much, Elder Annie. We appreciate you sharing with us, opening this event so beautifully, and welcoming us onto traditional land. We often get lost in our inboxes and to-do lists and meeting agendas, so I'd like to take a moment before we continue on to say thank you. I would like to ask you to join me in a moment of silence to honor the sacrifices of the many who have fallen in the service of their country, and to acknowledge the courage of Canadian Armed Forces and Royal Canadian Mounted Police veterans and members who served and continue to serve today. Over the past several months, Veterans Affairs Canada has engaged a group of external representatives made up of diverse women veterans and 2S LGBTQI veterans, stakeholder groups, and researchers to work as part of our forum planning group. The VAC team has relayed to me how dedicated the planning group has been, helping to guide the direction of this series, as well as helping to shape future forum goals. Your hard work did not go unnoticed. Nous aimerions remercier sincèrement les membres de ce groupe pour leurs nombreuses heures travaillées, leurs expertises, leur dévouement et leur engagement à assurer la réussite de ces activités. A brief note on terminology. The phrase women and 2S LGBTQI veterans is intended to be inclusive of gender and sexual diversity and encompass transgender and non-binary persons. Multiple identity factors make us who we are, and the experiences of all veterans are affected by intersecting identity factors. These include and are not limited to race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, age, neurodiversity, and disabilities. Veterans Affairs Canada is committed to ensuring policy development and program design and delivery is inclusive by applying a gender-based analysis plus or GBA plus intersectional mindset to everything we do. Listen, I take my role as MC seriously, and I'm your host, and we're in each other's homes and offices. So I want to highlight that today's engagement is intended to be a safe and welcoming space for all, respectful of our individual differences, with a common goal of enabling equity. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. Love a good list, so here goes. Throughout the forum, you will have opportunities to use the Q&A feature here on Zoom or in our upcoming Slido segment to share your questions, comments, and stories. We have about 135 people attending the forum today, so our moderators may not be able to respond to everything in the Q&A. We'd like to stress that your participation is important and valued, and all content collected throughout the forum will be used to inform future forums and the work of Veterans Affairs. Your participation is voluntary and completely confidential. Do have to give you the Government of Canada disclaimer to not include any personal or identifiable information. Si vous avez des questions techniques liées à la séance, ne me demandez pas. Veuillez les saisir dans le champ de clavardage directement sur Zoom. Tout au long de l'événement d'aujourd'hui, nous vous encourageons à participer dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Specifically, this broadcast is being offered in English and French, as well as ASL, LSQ by webcast, This includes simultaneous translation and AI-powered closed captioning. So thank you for being here. Les lignes de téléconférence pour l'activité figurent également dans ce courriel au cas où vous auriez de la difficulté à vous connecter à la web émission ou vous préfériez l'option audio seulement. On a serious note, some of the topics that will be discussed today may be difficult or upsetting. If you are a veteran, former RCMP member, still serving member, family member, or caregiver and need to speak to someone, the VAC assistance line is available to you at 1-800-268-7708. It's confidential and free and is available 24/7. The service allows you to speak to a mental health professional right now. To support the mental health of Canadians, the Government of Canada has created a free mental health online platform, which is also accessible 24/7, called Wellness Together Canada. It's available online, connects Canadians to mental health supports, resources, and counseling with a mental health professional. So please take care of yourselves today and connect with supports if the need arises. Prenez soin de vous-même. If you have any questions on VAC programs and services, or you're not yet connected with us, please go to the website, veterans.gc.ca, for more information on how to contact the department. It is now my pleasure to invite the Honorable Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense, Lawrence MacAulay, to offer his opening remarks. Welcome, Minister MacAulay.
Thank you, Jackie. And first, I'd like to thank Annie for such an opening. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And as you all know, we have a very diverse veterans community. Every individual has a unique need based on gender, sexual identity, orientation, race, and even language. Without a question, it is vitally important that all veterans feel supported when they come to our department for help. Far too long, these individual characteristics were overlooked when it came to veterans' care. A veteran was simply someone who wore the uniform. No distinctions were made, and there certainly was little understanding that post-career needs could vary depending on differences. Truthfully, we've come a long way since then. And I think we're doing a much better job for making sure that the support and services we offer to veterans reflect the diverse nature of the veterans community. These forums we've been having over the last few years have a lot to do with that. Every time we've gotten together, we've talked about what more we can do to better meet the needs of women and 2/LGBTQI plus veterans. And we've taken many positive steps within the department based on what we've learned to make sure folks are served better. We held the first ever Women's Veterans Forum in 2019 to discuss specific challenges women face in their lives after service. We brought into the Office of Women and LGBTQ2 veterans last year, in part as a response to what we heard at this forum. Since then, folks in the office have been actively working to promote gender equality, diversity, and inclusion to advance equal outcome for veterans. During the pandemic, we also held virtual roundtables to discuss topics like women and 2/LGBTQI plus veterans, women's veterans research and data and policy, services and programs that impact women veterans. We've also educated Veterans Affairs staff about the historic mistreatment that the Government of Canada inflicted on 2SLGBTQI plus members of the Canadian Armed Forces, RCMP, and Federal Public Service. We want our people to understand the diverse lived experience of LGBT purge survivors as they're able to serve all 2SLGBTQI plus veterans in a more culturally and traumatic informed way. Likewise, we've learned much more about military sexual trauma and how it can go on to affect former members and their families long after they leave the armed forces. And of course, we're always listening. Your perspectives, your experience, and your ideas are all vital in helping us improve the way we serve you. And I want you to know that we hear you and that we're going to keep working with you to make sure that things keep changing for the better. Thank you again for everyone for participating in this year's forum and for always pushing to keep improving how we deliver services to all veterans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Macaulay. Okay, I'm going to keep things moving, and now to move on to our agenda, I would like to introduce Faith McIntyre, Director General of Modernization, to introduce our first presentation and panel for the event. Veuillez vous joindre à moi pour souhaiter la bienvenue à Faith. Hi, Faith.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jackie. Thank you very much. As Jackie indicated, I am Faith McIntyre, Director General of Modernization here at Veterans Affairs Canada. And my pronouns are she, her, elle. First things first, I certainly want to welcome everyone to be part of the 2023 Women in 2SLGBTQ2I+ Veterans Forum. Veterans Affairs continues to have these meetings so we can hear regularly from women and 2SLGBTQ2I+ veterans about any changes or gaps that we should be addressing in our service delivery, program policy, or any other area that can influence veteran care. Admittedly, the pandemic threw a bit of a wrench into how often we've been able to get together. But even without an annual meeting, we've still managed to host some virtual roundtables and other engagement events over the past few years and have worked to include the voices of lived experience at those tables. Each one of these engagements has given us some important insight into what barriers women in 2SLGBTQI+ veterans are coming up with against as members of underserved communities. D'entendre des perspectives différentes nous a aidé à revoir et encadrer nos approches pour assurer que chaque vétéran reçoive l'appui pour correspondre à qui elles sont et qui elles y en ont besoin. Notre première présentation et discussion est censée pour vous donner une mise à jour de qu'est-ce qu'on a fait et de nos accomplissements. C'est entendu qu'on a encore du travail à faire et nous sommes tous ici pour écouter. On a hâte certainement de tous se revoir le 16 février. So thank you very much to Nathan, who will be presenting in a moment on what we know now about the diversity of Canadian veterans. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Faith. I am really excited to be here to highlight some of the doors that are opening right now and continue to open that give more definition to the intersectionality and diversity of the veteran population in Canada. As researchers, we push the boundaries of our knowledge by repeating two steps over and over. First is we make assumptions, and then we try to break those assumptions. We make a guess, a hypothesis, and then we challenge that guess. And I'll mention some of the new data that is helping us break our old assumptions today. Next slide, please. Nous avons fait des progrès considérables en tant que gouvernement dans la collecte de renseignements sur l'identité et l'intersectionnalité des vétérans. Nous avons vu des nouvelles questions de recensement, des nouvelles enquêtes détaillées pour les populations sous-représentées et aussi la prise en compte de l'identité dans les prestations des programmes de nos ministères. Next slide, please. For the first time in the 2021 census, all Canadians were asked about both sex at birth and gender. When reporting on smaller populations such as veterans, Statistics Canada uses broader categories of women plus and men plus, which each include transgender, cisgender, and a portion of non-binary persons. Also, for the first time in the 2021 census, all Canadians were asked about their military service. The last question that was on the census that related to military service was in 1971, so 50 years ago. But that question was only asked to men. Census 2021 counted 75,000 women plus veterans in Canada, about 1 out of every 6 veterans. Next slide, please. Lorsque nous examinons la répartition par âge des anciens combattants, nous constatons que les hommes sont plus nombreux dans chaque groupe d'âge. Ce n'est pas surprenant. Ce qui est intéressant, c'est qu'il y a une forte baisse dans les groupes d'âge les plus élevés pour les hommes, alors que les femmes vétéranes vivent plus longtemps. En fait, nous avons dû retourner à Statistique Canada pour dire, écoutez, nous avons besoin de plus de détails dans le groupe d'âge de 90, 95 et plus, surtout pour les femmes. Next slide, please. The proportion of transgender and non-binary veterans is similar to the general Canadian population, with each at about 0.1%. And we expect this to be slightly underreported, since the census questionnaire is completed at a household level, so the answers are not always private. Veterans were also comparable to the broader population, with 1.6% of veterans in same gender, transgender, or a non-binary couple. This rate is a bit higher in the serving military population at 2%, which will have implications for the veteran population once those serving members release. Next slide, please. Des questions spécifiques sur l'identité autochtone ont également été posées pour la première fois dans le recensement de 2021. Nous avons maintenant le compte des anciens combattants inuits, métis et des Premières Nations. Au total, il y a 23 000 anciens combattants autochtones au Canada. C'est plus de 5% de tous les anciens combattants. 1 sur 5 anciens combattants autochtones sont des femmes. Au sein de l'armée, ces taux sont encore plus élevés. Next slide, please. Now that Statistics Canada has identified veterans across Canada, we have launched just this past fall a new national survey, the Canadian Veteran Health Survey. Some of you may have been sampled in the survey. Thank you for your responses. This new survey will be our primary way to measure veteran well-being and population health across the veteran population in Canada. The survey questions about sexual orientation, gender, and Indigenous identity will be particularly helpful. And there are also a number of new questions about women's health, particular conditions that affect women and their reproductive health and maternal health. Next slide, please. C'est une période exceptionnelle pour les données sur les anciens combattants au Canada. Nous sommes vraiment à l'aube de nombreuses nouvelles connaissances et de nouvelles possibilités de mieux comprendre les besoins uniques de tous les anciens combattants. L'époque de généralisation basée sur la majorité est révolue. Ces vieilles suppositions sont maintenant brisées et nous sommes positionnés à avancer avec plus de significance et plus d'impact. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Your presentation certainly offers a lot of insight into the diversity of veterans in Canada to inform this discussion. So I'm very pleased now to have as part of our conversation for this first panel, Acting Commander of Military Personnel Command, Major General Lise Bourgon, who is also the Canadian Armed Forces Department of National Defence Champion for Women, and Assistant Deputy Minister of Service Delivery, Stephen Harris from Veterans Affairs Canada. Welcome to you both. This panel is an effort to set the context for the forum. So I'll be asking a couple of questions to the panelists on how the Department of Veterans Affairs and Canadian Armed Forces have changed the way that we view veteran and 2SLGBTQI+ veterans and still serving members based on what we've just heard, what impact that shift has had on what we've been doing, and where we hope to go in the future. So I'd like to begin to invite each of you by reflecting on your branch within Veterans Affairs Canada, or of course within the CAF DND, considering the presentation that we've just witnessed. How has the growing body of research, data, and stories from our stakeholders changed your department's understanding of who is a veteran, and what steps have been taken since 2019 to better serve women, 2SLGBTQI+ veterans, or still serving members? So perhaps, General, I will begin with you. Thank you.
Merci, Faith. C'est vraiment un plaisir d'être ici avec vous ce matin. I think I'm going to have to be careful about how long I talk, because I feel like we've done so much that I can talk and not let any time for Steve at all. So I'll be careful and go eye level. You know, there's been such change in CAF DND in the last few years. I have never seen in my entire career, and I've been serving for a while, so much change and so much good leadership from across the department. So the changes that we're doing right now is incredible. Really, when we look at it, inclusion and culture are at the forefront of everything we do. Okay, that's at the forefront at everything we do. And, you know, from learning from the LGBTQ+ Purge report, the ADBD report, of course, Justice Arbor's recommendation, anti-racial panel report, they've all brought a long list of systemic bias and discrimination against women, member of the 2SLGBTQI+ communities, racialized Canadians, and we know that the CAF and DND, we have to do better. We owe it to our people. We owe it to Canadians to change, evolve, and do better. I mean, honestly, great success was the stand-up of the Chief Professional Conduct and Culture, who is responsible, of course, of the culture evolution for the CAF. It's only one person, one department, and we have to look at the role of Général Carignan as not the person responsible for l'évolution de la culture au sein des Forces armées canadiennes, mais est vraiment le capitaine de notre équipe. Et puis tout le monde est à bord de son équipe, parce que la responsabilité est à tous dans ce changement de culture-là, dans cette évolution de la culture. So really, I think when we look at the CAF and DND, and my take at it is that we really are seeing a change from integration. So when I came in the forces in the late 80s, it was about integrating women. It's about, you know, later on it was integrating the 2SLGBTQI+ communities. The same thing for racialized Canadian. Well, we're moving from integration to inclusion, and that is a game changer from our department, where everyone doesn't have to change. Like, you don't have to change to belong in the CAF. You can remain yourself, and you can be yourself, feeling valued, welcome, and of course being provided a safe environment. But you can stay as who you are, and who you are as a mother, as a spouse, as a member of the 2SLGBTQI communities. This is super important. So, you know, that's really the center of what we're trying to do, is inclusion. So from a military personnel command, in the last few years, we've released our new ethos. It's called Trusted to Serve, and it really includes, again, inclusion and diversity as core values for the CAF. We've released a new inclusive leadership behavior, where our leaders, and I'm talking about officers, our non-commissioned members across the CAF, are evaluated on their abilities to be inclusive. And those qualities, those competencies are going to be used to to pick the leaders of tomorrow. They're going to be assessed in their performance appraisal on those inclusion capabilities. Et de là, les leaders qu'on va choisir pour demain, pour des positions, vont être basés sur les compétences d'inclusion. Donc, à la fin de la journée, je crois, c'est vraiment une boule de neige qu'on a commencé avec ça, qui est sur le top de la montagne et puis qui commence à descendre et qui va devenir de plus en plus grosse parce que le concept d'inclusion, je crois, va changer les forces armées canadiennes dans les prochaines années. Donc, une grosse différence. Comment on reconnaît, comment on assesse, évalue, comment on promet nos gens basés sur l'inclusion et puis aussi leur force de caractère. It's no longer about competency, it's about character and who you are. And this is going to be, it's going to change our leaders of tomorrow. A big change, and I'm sure you've seen it, are people in uniform. We've changed the dress instruction. So yes, we did not change our uniform, but who you bring into that uniform has changed. So it's a gender inclusive standard for everyone. So from, earrings and hair colors and the length, nail polish, all of that, you can bring your true self to the uniform. So a big change again from that inclusion piece. That will allow, Canadian society to see themselves in the sailors, the aviators, and I'm missing one, aviators, sailors, and the naval, that everyone feel inclusive. We launched a new women's health initiatives, really addressing the biases and the gaps that we've had in women's health and the diverse group. So 9 lines of effort. I'm not going to talk to all of them, but really focusing on women and diverse group, the specific needs. Okay, looking at sexual reproduction, pre and postpartum support, menopause, screening for cancer, greater access to OB-GYN, nurse practitioners, etc. The same thing looking at our physical fitness. We cannot deny that there are differences between men and women, okay? We have our strengths, we have weaknesses, but our bodies, those are, that's the reality. But how do we reduce that? How do we enable our women to be the great soldiers, aviators, and sailors that they can be? So we need to focus on that. So again, we just launched a program for our basic training so that the women who are arriving in Saint-Jean are better prepared. Better prepare, meaning that they will be successful, but even more important is that they will not get hurt, because that is key. Okay, so that's part of our physical fitness, reducing injuries, occupation fitness, again, the different needs of women as they go through their career, before having children, post pregnancy, in their 40s and all the way to menopause. Because again, our needs are special. They're just different. Okay. And I think there's been great work done with VAC on supporting women's veterans, but we have to ask a question, especially on the medical piece. Why are more women leaving the military due to medical issues? Okay. It's great that we take care of them, and VAC is doing a great job, but my question is why? Like, why are we breaking our women in a career in the CAF? How do we correct that? So these are all great questions that research is being done to better understand. Like one of the example I'm going to use is incontinence. We know that women suffer, veterans, women in the CAF suffer from incontinence at a higher rate que les femmes dans le civil. Donc, c'est quoi la raison? Donc, c'est sûr que là, on vient d'annoncer qu'on permet leak-proof underwear for women in the CAF, which is great. But we need to ask why, OK? C'est-tu à cause de notre équipement? C'est-tu à cause de nos procédures pour qu'on puisse changer ça? Et puis, pour permettre aux femmes dans les forces armées canadiennes de servir et d'avoir une grande carrière et de ne pas être obligées de sortir du côté médical. We're also looking at, COVID showed us that Canadian society, and I think the world also, still has a bit of women still have a traditional societal role for women, okay? Like spouses and mothers. COVID was a super good example of this, where women had to move from the workforce because they were required at home. Donc, comment est-ce qu'on regarde à cette réalité-là que j'aimerais bien changer, avoir une meilleure égalité entre les genres, mais on n'est pas encore là dans notre société. Donc, comment qu'on regarde ce problème-là, puis de donner la chance à nos femmes d'avoir une carrière comparativement, la même grande carrière, les mêmes chances qu'un autre homme. Donc, il faut regarder du côté du support familial pour aider aux femmes, encore aider les hommes aussi, daycare and family support, so that they can be all that they want to be, okay? That they want to be, and I know that they can be. Donc, de ce côté-là aussi, on a fait beaucoup on a avancé. Et puis, le dernier que je voudrais vraiment jaser, c'est à propos de CAF-TG, qui est le bijou un peu dans les dernières années dans notre organisation, là, qui est un peu entre CAF et puis VAC, qui permet une transition de la vie militaire à une vie de vétéran ou la vie civile qui est vraiment bien pensée, et puis qu'on accompagne nos gens quand ils enlèvent leur uniforme pour leur donner la sécurité et puis le confort de savoir que leur transition va être un succès. Donc, we've done, and I can talk on forever. I told you and I warned you, but I will stop right now because I know that Steve has some things to say, but great things done that have been done. Trust me, there's many more to come. It's a question of priorities and sequencing, mais on est tous à bord du côté de CAF-DND pour ce changement de culture et puis cette inclusion-là.
Thank you. And I know we certainly didn't put either of you in a very opportunistic situation, in the sense that you know, very little time to talk about so much, though really this is just the tip of the iceberg in the conversations that we wish to have throughout today's sessions, of course, and having you both back as well on the 16th of February. So Stephen, with that, then I know some good links made by the General with work that's being done jointly, but from a veteran's perspective, Stephen, how would you respond to this question?
Merci Faith, et c'est toujours un plaisir de partager l'écran avec Jean-Léonard Bourgon. Elle a bien expliqué, je pense, beaucoup de travaux qui sont en cours, de travaux qui existent entre anciens combattants, puis avec la Force armée canadienne. Nos deux organisations travaillent de près pour offrir des solutions, des idées, des changements qui vont apporter un grand changement en résultat pour les vétérans, les vétéranes et tous les membres des Forces armées canadiennes. I think what I'll try and do in the short time that I have here, Faith, and thanks to everybody for joining, is just talk about one or two examples of how these kinds of elements are being brought into what we do at Veterans Affairs Canada, how that works with the Canadian Armed Forces, but how that actually comes into some practical examples here. And so, you know, the minister and Nathan spoke very well about sort of the evolution and the development of how we've been engaging with women and 2ELGBTQI plus veterans over the course of the last little while. And Nathan spoke about the census data and what we're learning. How are we going to use that data? I think is really the next important question. How do we get that data, and how do we compare it with existing information, data, and other things that we have to make sure that we're improving the way in which benefits and services are delivered to the full range of the veteran population? And so with the office that was created within the department, we've developed a VAC gender-based analysis plus strategy. What that does is help us to fully integrate GBA Plus into all stages of design, development, implementation, monitoring, and decision-making. What does that mean? It means when we start a new program, we're going to be fundamentally using GBA Plus to ensure that everybody has equality of treatment, equality of access, and is considered as part of the development and design. That said, we also have programs and benefits and services that have been in place for a very long time. Those things come under regular review, and we make sure that when we go through processes of reviewing how these programs are performing, how they're helping veterans, of all communities to achieve their success and well-being, that we're looking at these principles in terms of this. And so it means that we're going to design and conduct research. We're going to report those findings, ensure equitable outcomes in terms of representation, project impacts across all subgroups of the veteran population. An example of that would be how we're going to conduct a GBA plus of the population, the veterans, population of veterans experiencing homelessness. We want to identify unmet needs and any gaps in supports. And we recognize, and the research tells us, that there are different outcomes, there are different factors and risk factors that are in place for different populations within the veteran overall population. We need to make sure that that's done. And so that when we look at community health needs assessments, we look specifically at underrepresented communities of veterans, including those who are women, 2S LGBTQI+, Indigenous or racialized. That's one element. Another practical element, which I'll speak about, is the way in which we need to look at health information. General Bourgon gave a couple of good examples of how there might be different outcomes for male and or female veterans because of different elements. And so we're looking at this. We've talked about this in the past, and I'll give you a different example of how we're doing it this time. In this case, when we look at GBA+, we look at coronary artery disease, for example, which is a common cause of heart attacks. And this is a condition that has gained traction in many research circles over the course of the last while in terms of how it may be different. And you may have seen articles in the media and other places. When we apply a GBA mindset to this and review of current research, it tells us that symptoms of coronary artery disease in women often present differently in men, and therefore may be misdiagnosed, undertreated, and maybe diagnosed later in life. In fact, at 65+ for women, as compared to maybe 55+ for men. As a result, women may have poorer health outcomes. And our guidance and a way of assessing the severity of the disease need to reflect these differences so that our disability adjudicators who are looking at rendering decisions are able to recognize those signs and symptoms of coronary artery disease that may be unique to women. Having this knowledge can help us reduce the need for medical consultation, steps in making decision process, and make sure that veterans get the access to the treatment that they need and access to the outcomes that they need as well. I'll stop there, Faith, and turn it back to you for more discussion.
Thank you very much. And certainly a lot of synergies, as there should be, particularly in the collaboration and the work that's being done jointly, sharing of the research. You both mentioned the learnings, the importance of the data and the research, that whole concept of inclusion of GBA+. Yet at the same time, you both acknowledged that there certainly is more work to be done. So the only other question I have for you today, and again in our short time as we kick off the session with other panels to come, is what really do you hope to achieve by being part of this forum? So perhaps, Stephen, I'll start with you, and then we'll go over to you, General Bourgon.
Thanks again, Faith, and I'm speaking certainly on behalf of all of my colleagues at Veterans Affairs Canada who are participating in this forum, who will be participating in the in-person forum next week. We always look forward to the dialogue, the feedback, the direct feedback that we receive through these kinds of channels and others, where we hear from people that something isn't working, where we hear from people where there's opportunities to make things better. In every forum that we've held, and there's been a few so far, we've always learned something. We've always been able to take it away and help to integrate that into our own decision making, into changes that are going to make better outcomes for our veteran population. That also means education for us too. We know we need to continue to learn. So there's data pieces, and then there's lived experience, and we start to see a lot of the lived experience being shared with us through these kinds of forums and through other ways of connecting with veterans and veteran stakeholders, particularly in these communities. So that's going to be a continued theme for us, is certainly one of learning, listening, hearing examples and questions that the community might have and want to share with us, and then engaging about how we can make those things better and improve that process going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Général.
Merci beaucoup. En plus de ce que Steve vient de dire, parce que nous aussi, on écoute. On est à l'écoute parce qu'on veut changer. Donc, le feedback, okay, est super important. Aussi de savoir qu'est-ce que nous, on fait, parce qu'on vous a écouté. On a tous eu un live experience qui n'a pas toujours été positif, OK? Donc, on vous écoute. et puis on fait des corrections. Et puis je pense que c'est important. It's super important that everyone is tracking the progress that we're doing, okay? Because the CAF of today, we're certainly not the CAF that I joined in 1987. And the CAF of today is not the CAF that les vétérans qui sont ici aujourd'hui ont servi. Donc, c'est important de traquer qu'est-ce qu'on fait, les bons coups. Parce qu'à la fin de la journée, I'm going to be selfish, not me selfish, but CAF selfish, is that recruitment is super important. And I need everyone on the screen that are attending today to talk about their career and to recognize that the career in the CAF is a good career. We have changed, okay? My daughter and my son are at RMC right now, and I would not have allowed them to join if I had any doubt in my mind that they would not have been safe. So I need the people on the screen to talk about, not to deny their bad experience, but look at all the positive that we've done and potentially talk about a career with their communities, because we know that racialized communities, women in particular, do not join the military unless they've talked to someone they know, a family, a friend, and they come with a recommendation to join the CAF. So I need all of you to really help us because we're at a critical point right now in our recruitment, and there are people that are showing up, and we need people, but we also need that diversity of people coming at the door, and everyone has a role. Like you can be the best recruiter for us out there, but you need to understand that we've made some great progress. We're not there yet completely, I'll be honest, but we're on our way there, and we need that positive to be reflected. So the better we communicate, que vous comprenez qu'est-ce qu'on fait, puis où qu'on s'en va, c'est un win-win pour tout le monde. Donc, c'est vraiment ce que je voulais parler ce matin.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I think that awareness of the positive impacts, the work that's been done, sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, as they say, but continuing to move forward together. And the messages that you've both shared on that work, on your engagement on behalf of yourselves, certainly, and your colleagues, is critical. As I said, we launched not only today, but leading into the full day session on the 16th. I also know that your time is precious, and we are very grateful that you were both able to carve out some time to be with the group today. So avec ça, je vous remercie énormément. And Jackie, I turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Faith. And thanks to Stephen and Major General Bourgon for their insights and comments. Appreciate their sharing the positive points of progress, and we'll welcome them back on February 16th to chat further. We're seeing a lot of excellent comments in the Q&A that are popping up, and I think that many of these might inform our follow-up conversation with our senior departmental officials on day 2 of the session next week, next Thursday. So I want to introduce the moderator for our next session on the agenda. Shannon Hardigan is a manager with VAC's engagement and events team, and has worked to help government incorporate the views and needs of the community into decision making. So Shannon is going to be guiding us in this rare and really special opportunity to hear from veterans on their identities and consider complex questions on how we might recognize their diversity. So I'll let you take it away, Shannon. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Jackie. And I'll invite our panelists to turn on their cameras as well. I'll start by greeting everyone and just saying that I'm really honored to be part of this rich discussion and exchange that's happening today. We started one of our first VAC presentations had a lot of data, rich new data about the diversity of the veteran population in Canada. And we've just heard about changes, at a policy level within VAC and the Canadian Armed Forces. And so now we get to bring some life to those numbers and those policies and hear from some veterans who have lived experience as women and or 2S LGBTQI plus veterans. So so we're going to just launch in. I don't know if we're all on deck yet, but I'm going to start with our first question. So we're going to start with, we have 4 panelists, and each of you we're going to ask to tell us a bit about your military service and reflect on how you feel the image of a veteran has changed in your lifetime. Where has the perception of a veteran been challenged? And where do you think the next challenge might be? I was going to call on Christine Wood to go first. Are you there, Christine?
I am here. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, great.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Wood. I'm pleased to be with you here today, and I'm coming to you from Ottawa on the unceded land of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin peoples. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. To give you a bit of background about me, I joined the Air Force as a reservist in 2010 after finishing university, and I was able to serve for 4 years. It's never easy to share this, but the truth is that I was raped by a fellow service member, and that ultimately ended my career with the CAF. Since 2016, I've been an advocate for other military sexual trauma survivors. So in response to the question of how the perception of veterans has been challenged, I have to start with myself, because I myself had outdated ideas of whom a veteran is. And although I became a veteran on the day of my release, I didn't start to identify or even call myself, introduce myself as a veteran until I began advocating, until I met other MST survivors and started using my voice publicly. I think that some big challenges to the perception of veterans has been accomplished through the class action lawsuits that we've seen. So the Purge lawsuit and the Hader Beatty class action lawsuit, I think they forced Canadians to acknowledge the diversity of the CAF population because of the harm that was being done to certain groups of people. And by turn, that enhanced their idea or understanding of who a veteran is and how diverse the veteran population is. I hope that the next challenge, I'm sorry here, I hope that the next challenge comes from VAC itself. I want to see VAC make its sex and gender-based analysis available to the public so that we who've been directly impacted have a chance to see how intersectional the considerations are and ultimately provide us with a chance to offer feedback. One idea I have is that I'd like to see VAC create some sort of external advisory committee that has veterans sitting on it to help VAC with its GBA plus reviews. And so that ensures that our lived experiences as people who are the most impacted by inequities, our experiences become mainstreamed alongside all the knowledge that VAC already has of male sex-specific issues. So men and women are different. We've all acknowledged this. We experience different reactions to similar situations, and there's bona fide biological differences that demand research to produce better outcomes and policy programs and access to treatment, and hopefully full recovery. I hope that new information and knowledge that is gained through research on how to best support women veterans is consciously made available to case managers and passed back upstream to the CAF to help identify and prevent similar problems for women still serving. Because the best solution is always to prevent injuries or illnesses in the first place. So identifying female sex-specific areas of concern is important, and so is sharing that research and seeking feedback. I'm not sure that VAC has Canadian research on some women sex-specific issues that are publicly available yet, but that research needs to be done. It needs to be made public in order to ensure equitable and evidence-based policy, benefits, services, and programs. Research in issues like pelvic floor problems, reproductive health issues, rates of infertility, miscarriages, and stillbirth, and even the prevalence of sex-specific cancer for female veterans compared to non-veterans is missing at this point. Ultimately, I throw the next challenge to VAC to shine sunlight on these issues, research them, make the research public, and seek feedback from veterans on how their policies and programs can best serve women. This is important because when I hear that VAC is handing back $1 billion unspent dollars this year, I want to know how much of that could have or should have gone to address these knowledge gaps. If we're serious about equity, we need to continue to challenge these outdated perceptions of veterans by breaking them down in part with real data. Then, and only then, can VAC tailor its policies to meet the needs of all veterans, including women. I think at this point that VAC, as an institution, needs to do more to find the next challenges, and that they can do that by engaging with us. This way, we can truly work towards ensuring equitable health outcomes for all members. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. That was a strong start to our panel. We're going to turn it over now to Stephen Deschamps.
Bonjour and good afternoon, everyone. Like Christine, I'm a little taken aback and I'm reflecting on the moment for a second of being on a panel with such prestigious and influential individuals with such a background. I want to pause for a second and tell you I'm a veteran. It's important, and I'll come back and circle back to explain why I emphasize that at the top of my talk. I joined Air Cadets when I was 13 years of age. I wore a uniform up until the time I was 19 in reserves and cadets, and then joined the Canadian Armed Forces, the Royal Canadian Air Force, in 1982 as a pilot trainee. My career was just starting to take off. I was 22, 23 years of age. And suddenly I was caught up in what was known as the gay purge. The powers to be summoned me to a little place on Canadian Forces Base Ottawa North at the time, which was the Special Investigative Units of the Military Police Headquarters. I was interrogated, polygraphed, sent to psychiatrists, and summarily released from the armed forces for no other reason than being gay. During that process of interrogations, the insidious side of what was going on in this gay purge was that members of the forces were asked to try and divulge the names of others, and as many as 9,000 citizens of Canada and members of the Canadian Forces were summarily released under what was then known as CFAO 19-20. I became a black hole in my own life in 1982 when I was thrown out of my family, the Canadian Armed Forces, from NDHQ, and sent to the street. In 1992, 10 years later, I decided to take some action against the injustice, and I was advised the best thing to do was to re-enroll. And so I re-enrolled in the reserve force, looking to challenge the law and to get back into the family that I loved so much, the Canadian Armed Forces. It turns out, as I was going through the process, the famous challenge court case of Michelle Douglas occurred and reversed the policy in the Canadian Armed Forces and required the cease and desist of all policies contrary to the good of members who were part of the 2ELGBTQI family. And so I was re-enrolled and went on for another 10, 15 years and retired voluntarily as a lieutenant colonel in the reserves. I circle back now to say, I now say I'm a veteran. And until 2017, when the Prime Minister of Canada stood up in the House of Commons and apologized for the previous time, that the policies that precluded members of my community to be involved in the Canadian Forces. Until that time, we were not veterans. We were not recognized as having served in the Canadian Forces. We were in a black hole. And so there were no services offered by Veterans Affairs to members of the gay purge. There were never any legal opportunities. There was never outreach in any way for mental health or otherwise to help us. And so there is in our midst, records are now starting to show as many as 30,000 Canadians that were followed, 9,000 of which were purged from the Armed Forces of Canada during this gay purge and are on the streets like me. So my contribution to this part and this moment at the opening is to say, I am gay and I am a veteran. Over to you.
Thank you, Stephen. We're gonna keep the pace moving quickly and we're gonna offer the floor to Martine Roy.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I don't have the background. I've had a little technical, so I hope it's all good. So my name is Martine Roy. I was in the Army at 19 years old, 1983. I joined the Army a little bit, not really willingly. It was more my father that was working for National Film Board that would be a good place for me to go to. So I became a medical assistant because when they do the exercise to see in which field you should go, that was the field that was offered to me. And honestly, at that time, it's in the 80s, I could not tell you what was my sexual orientation. I was just starting my life. It was for me not a question or something that was a problem. So I kept on doing my service. I arrived at Borden, and it's in Borden I got arrested. And I was a little naive because I thought they were lost tourists that I was asked to go in their car and get them out of the field, to find out they were SRU because they looked like civilian. And never went to my mind I should ask for a lawyer or anything because I didn't even understand what did I do wrong. You know, I didn't do any crime. So they brought me to that little house in Borden and they started the interrogation and it lasted about 5 hours. And like Stephen, the question they were not really questioned. They just wanted to crack you, make you feel bad and maybe give some names. And then they let me go. So I thought everything was fine. So I came back to Ottawa. And in Ottawa, I was at National Defense Medical Center. And there I was called to see a psychiatrist. And again, nothing happened. After that, they even offered me a new job because my contract was finishing as a comm research. So I received my contract and it was top secret code. And I say, you sure you wanna? Yes. So I signed it and I was very, very proud. I even went and bought myself a brand new car. Finally, to turn around and being called in the headquarters and be told that I was being let go because I was homosexual. And from there, honestly, my whole world fell down and all that. But I did try to fight a little bit. I was in Ottawa. I went to see priests. I went to the Parlement. I did all kind of thing. I even did a redress for 5 years with my father until Jeanne Sauvé and Général Thériault. And like Stephen, in 1992, Michel Douglas won the case. So again, very naive. I thought somebody would come and knock at my door and say, hey, we're really sorry, and we would like you to come back, but never happened. So for me, it was really hard. It took me a while to step back on my feet and finally have a career that I like. And I realized how much it's important in the workplace to be authentic. And mostly in the army, because you're there to fight, you're there to defend your country, and you have to work together as a team. And I was lucky enough to work at IBM, where I worked there for 20 years, where I lived that. That was really inclusion. Like, we had a team of 30 people, and it didn't matter your sexual orientation or your gender identity. It was, are we going to succeed? And when I was in the army, for me, a veteran was somebody that, went in the army and left after maybe the war or retirement and things like that. And when they were purging us, they were telling us we have a dishonorable release and you cannot be a veteran. I even have the sheet that has a cross on it. So never in my right mind, I thought I was a veteran, because I was purged and I was shamed, right? It was a big shame thing. And for me, even if they changed the policy, I could not understand why nobody was talking about it, why nobody was like saying, oh, we made a mistake or something. So that's why in 2014, I joined the We Demand an Apology group. And thank God for Lynn Gutelier and Carmen Poulain. And then there was Gary Kingsman, Patricia Gentile, and people joined in. And finally, the Just Society Committee was created. And I was able to put in the 84 recommendation to have an apology and a redress. And then with Todd Ross and Alita Satelik in 2016, we were able to do a class action. And for me, what's important all in there, I want to come back. For me, I don't think I was fired because I was a lesbian or I was homosexual. I think I was fired because I was a woman. And I still remember in the 80s, they didn't want me there. They didn't want us there. It was obvious. And I still remember at Rockcliffe, the hard time I had to go through there. And when we started that whole conversation, we said the difference in language too. I was from Quebec. I was a Quebec person in the 80s and Ontario. Sometimes people didn't even want to put gas in my car because I had a plate from Quebec. So all that in the bucket was really complicated for me in that time. And I was really feeling it as a woman more than anything else. They were more affecting my gender than my sexual orientation. And I was always finding that it doesn't make sense. It should be a place that, that include everybody. It should be a place where people really feel good about themselves because their role is critical. We're talking about our defense. We're talking about our protection. We want a healthy army. And so I went and do my life until 2016 before we did the class action and all that. And I can tell you today that I was kind of shocked to still know there's only 12% of women joining the Canadian Armed Forces today. And I'm like, whoa, it's 40 years ago and we're still at the same place. So I still feel that the purge that was done left some major scar in the culture of today. And I think with the misconduct as well that Kristen did and all that, we're seeing things coming out, but it's not all coming out. It's still, there's still the culture, and that comes to the veteran after. Because what's happening in the Canadian Armed Forces goes to the veterans. So for me, it's really important. And I forgot two things when I started to talk is my pronoun is she, her, elle. And as well, I'm in Toronto. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of Credit, the Anishinaabe, and the Chippewa. and the Ando Nosowi and the Wenda people. And I'm sure I didn't say it all right, but my best. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Tila, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your service.
Thank you. I'll try to be very brief, being conscious of time. I'm Tila Morrison, and I'm very pleased to be here today from Ottawa. I joined cadets at 12 and got the bug and joined the Canadian Forces in 1986. And I ended up serving 35 years in the Army, just retiring last year. I did 4 operational tours, did 9 years of my career in the reserves, raised 4 boys. 3 of them are now serving in the CAF. I'm also a survivor of MST, military sexual trauma, which did cause significant career issues, including a release from the CAF when it occurred, a re-enrollment, but then forcing a transfer to the reserves for 9 years, and eventually a medical release. I tried to keep it brief. I think in general, we as Canadians perceive our perception of veterans has changed significantly. We used to think of the World War veterans as back in the 80s and 90s, but it wasn't really until the Afghanistan years that this notion started to really change to a younger generation of a veteran. And it's just starting to include women in our vision, and women who have actually been to operational theaters. And I think the real challenge is to focus on those unique needs of women veterans and those in the 2SLGBTQI+ community, as these groups have been underrepresented in the Veterans Affairs community. We know that women face homelessness more than male vets, for example, just one of the many different areas that we've already discussed. So I feel a focus needs to be done to support these non-traditional veterans to find these unique needs that we have and to support them with the programs and policies moving forward. Told you I'd keep it brief. That's how I'll start. Thanks.
Thanks, Tila. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump into the next question. I would like to reflect on what everyone has said, but there's so much diversity and raw experiences that you've all shared, and I don't want to I don't want to try to summarize to dilute the significance of what you've shared. So question number 2 speaks to how we want to sort of move forward a bit. It's based on the concept of nothing about us without us, which speaks to the fact that individuals are experts in their lived experience, and that policy development should include those voices and the participation of people who are affected by the policy that's under development. We'd like to ask each of you where you've seen progress with VAC, including diverse voices in policy development, and where do you see gaps or opportunities for continued improvement? Stephen, will you start us off?
Happily. The 2SLGBTQI+ community has been really a relatively new group of people to Veterans Affairs. 2LGBTQ veterans hardly exist. We're really an invisible minority, in the sense that for so long we were stuck in the closet, dangerously having to be worried about our careers if we were in the armed forces. That the talk of gay veterans today is something very, very new and almost strange to us. So we have this world where this invisible minority within the Canadian Forces, how do we identify who are the members of the 2SLGBTQI+ community as an example? How is it that we can reach out to members so that Veterans Affairs can acknowledge the fact that there are veterans that are serving on, and in the world of the gay purge, so many are on the street, so many still afraid to come forward and talk because of this terrible stigma that was placed on all of us that happened as a result of the traumatic experience of being purged. So we have mental health issues for a large group of veterans that are still on the street today that will not approach Veterans Affairs, and or for that matter, even speak openly about their experiences having been purged from the military for being gay because of this incredible trauma. So therein lies a challenge. Next speaker, please.
That's an understatement, I think, Stephen. Tila, would you like to address this question?
Absolutely, thank you. I've seen Veterans Affairs starting to support organizations that support these non-traditional vets through funding to third parties, some recent policy changes, as well as the focus now on GBA Plus to review the current programs that Mr. Harris spoke about. For example, there is now some recognition of injury in regards to military sexual trauma survivors, but that was really a reaction because of the class action lawsuits. And this is similar to, the gay purge and that class action lawsuit. It would be good to see Veterans Affairs continue to be proactive and look at other barriers to care of the non-traditional veterans and be proactive in their support. As Christine said, more involvement by veterans with lived experience would be good. As well as mentioned by Mr. Harris, some policies and programs within VAC still have some biases in regards to women's health, for example. An analysis of the needs of these non-traditional veterans and the barriers to care will help VAC focus on these more vulnerable veterans. There is already significant research in areas of women's health in regards to service, primarily out of the US. So it would be good for VAC to look at this research and see how it can apply to the Canadian Veterans policies and programs rather than trying to do their own research and reinvent the wheel each time. There is research out there. That's just my initial thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Tila, sorry. I was reading Christine, but Martine is our next panelist on this. What do you have to say about inclusion of diverse voices, Martine? Sorry.
Well, I think it's really important, and I see an evolution for sure. It started, I think, in 2015, even 2016, the Department of 2ELGBTQI at Veteran Affairs, where people that was going through the purge, discovering they were purge victim because we didn't know when the settlement was coming. There was a whole department open to help, and that for me was really an amazing thing to do, because it's not easy to come and talk about it. And just to give you an example, I was working with a man that I didn't know he was in the Army before. I was working with him for other community help, and to discover that he did 4 years at the military college and he left in 1981 by fear of being purged. And all his life from there was in the shame and everything. And he didn't even feel, when I told him, "You're a veteran." Il said, "Ben non, c'est pas possible. Je suis pas ancien combattant. Moi, j'ai fait 4 ans, mais j'ai pas été au combat." So I come a man like him, didn't know. So I was really happy, and I feel privileged when I'm able to say, "Hey, we're going to help you. You're going to be able to apply." And there's even a group that was created that called Rainbow Veteran of Canada, that I think this too is a premiere. It's innovation. It's doing new thing. And I think it's a first, because it's important to understand that there's more veteran than Canadian Armed Forces employee. In Canada, there's a big amount. So how do we go and find, because if there's 10%, it means there would be about 7,000 people from the 2ELGBTQ community in Canada. And that's not what we're seeing. So there's still a lot of work of, we need to demystify what's a veteran. And we need as well for the people that, some people, I think they needed to be kicked out to really say something happened, but a lot of them left by fear. And I think they could come and join the Veteran Affair and get some help about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Martine. Christine.
Hi there, thank you. And I want to echo the thoughts of everyone who spoke before. It just speaks to the diversity of our experiences and our needs, and the need for all of us to share this to help inform VAC policy. I think that the Hader Beatty lawsuit led to the creation of the Office of Women and 2SLGBTQI plus persons. But I'm not convinced that the actual name or focus of the office is inclusive enough. I would actually like to see it changed to the Office of Health Equity. If we are really focused on equitable health outcomes, then I think we need to look at more than 2 specific groups of the veteran population. I think that if the office is focused on health equity, it will help VAC identify which groups need the most attention and are the most underserved. And the answer might still be women and 2SLGBTQI plus people, but the answer might be Indigenous people or persons of color, that they're the ones who are most underserved. We don't really know yet because we haven't branched out that far. I think this is a good first step, but it needs to be broadened to ensure more equitable outcomes. To everyone listening now, I think I have to, as an advocate, just take 1 minute to ask you to please help me advocate for these changes. At the end of the day, all veterans want to recover from their injuries and live their best life. And I would like to see I would like to see more people consulted and a further breakdown of who VAC is serving, because it's not just women, it's not just people with MST. It's just like there are so many subsets, and I don't think that we really know that we're serving them if we don't know they exist. So as Tila pointed out, these like unrecognized veterans, these you know, and all of our legacy veterans, I just, it needs to be more inclusive. And so if we're talking about health equity, I would strongly encourage VAC to change the name of the office to the Office of Health Equity. That's my number 1 ask. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine, and everyone. We're gonna power through to our 3rd question. This panel is about breaking open the box and challenging stereotypes of veterans. I think we can say the box is open, and we are exploring the many facets of who veterans are. So we ask you now about stereotypes. What are some stereotypes we should let go of? And how can we enhance inclusion in terms of recognition and also access to programs and services and supports and outcomes? Speaking a bit to Christine's point about equity, how do we improve inclusion in our outcomes and access to programs? Tila, will you start us off on this question?
Absolutely. So I'd say the stereotypes are often, we hear that men have done combat, women have not, or that some veterans are worth more than others because the time they served or where they served, whether they did ops or not. We just need to get rid of all of that. There's also stereotypes around the types of injuries. And we know that there are some gender biases in VAC programs currently. Mr. Harris actually even mentioned it. For example, the mechanism of injury for mental health needs to be taken into account. Support for a PTSD because of a military sexual trauma, for example, is much different than a combat-related PTSD. It's hard, for example, for a woman to go into an OSIS clinic with an MST-related PTSD looking for peer support. So flexibility in the type of care for each case is important. Physical health is another area where gender biases still occur. Like Christine said, we need to really look at that. And where VAC, I think, can do some improvements. For example, women have higher rates of MSK, musculoskeletal injuries, and pelvic and gynecological injuries due to service. There's a lot of research on this from the US. And VAC is often reluctant to approve disability awards for these areas and are asking clients to prove service relation to these injuries through a physician that doesn't even understand the military impact on women's health. Major General Bourgon's example of incontinence is like one example, where women vets have higher rates, but have to ask a physician to prove the military correlation when these physicians just don't understand it. But the research is already there and could support that correlation. So it'd be good if that could be proactive in applying the research that already exists and allow this demonstration of correlation to service through this research, if it's available, rather than trying to get a civilian physician to come forward who has no understanding of the impact of women's health. That's my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tila. Definitely worth more than 2 cents. Martin, over to you.
Yeah, but I think we did address it a little bit, but that whole conception that the person had to be in the war, or it's an old person, that old man that is going, it's that old, we need to demystify that. Like, we need to demystify a couple of things, like, for me, like, again, the gender. I think it's very interesting what Tila was bringing, because it's that everywhere, and we realize that there's not as much study on women that there is on the men. So why, and how can we change that? And I always saw the Canadian Army and Veteran Affairs be very innovative, be always the first upfront with those study and things like that. So I would say that I would like to see a Veteran Affairs that is really, they're the first one, they get those study, they send people for conference and all that, and they bring back that material, because with the amount of veteran that you have, like Christine said, a lot of different ones. And you have some group dependent as well, the geography, because I think some people are more vulnerable and going to more stereotype when they're out west than when they're out east. They're all that to look into. But for me, it's really to demystify what is a veteran, and to maybe go out there and to the public, because they don't know. Me, I know, because I'm sitting with you, and I was, somebody took the time to come and get me, but a lot of people don't know out there the support that they could get. And like Christine said, there's people from the First Nation, there's people from the Black minority. I think it's important, but I think it's still important that the 2S, because the 2S is a two-spirit. It's very important to understand. It means that we put the two-spirit first, because we believe they were here first, right? So we want to respect it. So it's 2S, and then the L is lesbian, and the G is gay, and the B is bisexual, and T is trans, and I is intersex. So many groups enter that. And when you enter the gender on top of it, it touches so many people. So I think it's important to realize that a person that is a veteran can have a lot of face of they come across differently, and that's what's the beauty of the Canadian Army Forces, to have different people.
Merci, Martin. Christine, over to you. You're muted, Christine.
Mute.
There we
Is that
go.
better? I'm so sorry about that. Gosh, I'm just listening to everyone and nodding my head. Tila, Martin, it's true. These I think we all have a sense of what these old stereotypes are, and beliefs are about veterans and veteran experiences. And they are going, and we're pushing the boundary on people's understanding. Something specific that I would like to highlight, I just can't stress the importance enough, is I think we need to bust the myth that that people, men and women, experience mental illness and physical illness differently. For most women experience, and I can attest to this myself, my mental pain comes out physically, and I am always in pain. Like there's something that always hurts. And I have spent thousands of dollars out of my pocket to pay for services and treatments that I needed to be able to function, because VAC has not traditionally recognized the link between mental and physical health. Women, like in general society, in the open society, experience pain from their mental illness more often than men do. And it's even greater within the CAF population. So I would really like to see a conscious effort to break down that wall and stop this mental versus physical type of mindset and look at each patient, each client in a more holistic way, so that we understand that someone like myself, who spent a year bunkered in my parents' basement after the assault, afraid to go out, afraid to walk, go to the mall, go to the gym, my body physically deteriorated. That was 11 years ago. And I am only now just getting the help that I need. But some of the problems with the help that I need right now are that I have to go out for them. So I would like to see greater access to the kind of services I need, like kinesiology, massage therapy, physiotherapy, available to me in the home. Because women generally are less likely to drive. We're less likely to leave the home because of other commitments and responsibilities that we have. As soon as we release from the forces, it's like, especially as parents, we, take off the beret and put the mom hat on full time, when what we really need to be focused on is recovery. And so I'd like to see greater supports for women, for everyone who is injured by a mental illness like PTSD, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, substance abuse, have them receive help in the home when that is most appropriate for them. There's so much more I could say, but I just recognize the time constraints. So I will end it there, and I will thank you for having me here to speak today.
Thank you, Christine. And we're going to give the final word on this question to Stephen Deschamps.
Thank you. Stereotypes to SLGBTQI plus, the word itself, the acronym itself, it's a mouthful. And we talk about stereotypes within that community, and then put another layer of fact that so many of our community served in the armed forces and were invisible. The challenge for Veterans Affairs is to find the right kind of messages and the right kind of communication vehicles to reach out to the LGBTQI plus community. It's a different world today if you're a gay person in the armed forces. I know this, having spent 40 some odd years in the shadows, hiding my sexuality from the armed forces, and then while wearing the uniform, seeing in the last 10 years that changes before my very eyes. And then, and recognizing how positive and how strong it is for members of my community to be active and serving in the Canadian Armed Forces. So the stereotypes are breaking down. I have been honored by being appointed as the honorary colonel for 443 Maritime Helicopter Squadron just in the last few months. And so in the last few months, I was with the commanding officer walking around the squadron here in Victoria, British Columbia. And all throughout the building, I'm seeing gay imagery and iconography throughout the building. from the government of Canada saying that diversity is a part of the Canadian Armed Forces. So it's a good place to be today. And I want that to be the closing positive message if I am so privileged. And I just want to finish my moments on this panel to reach out, as Martine said earlier, a great colleague and friend of mine. There is an organization called the Rainbow Veterans of Canada, and I serve on that. And we're trying to reach out to members of the Gay Purge to be that welcoming group of people to help you get to Veterans Affairs if you are in need of help. So if you're looking for a way to reach out, if you are a purge survivor, go to Rainbow Veterans of Canada, and we're there to help. And merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and to all of our panelists, Tila Morrison, Martine Roy, Christine Wood, and you, Stephen Deschamps. I understand that there's been a lot of supportive comments and love flowing from the chat. One of the drawbacks of a virtual event is we don't see how people are responding. Hopefully, for those of us who can attend in person 1 week from today, we'll be able to feel that community more vividly. But I just want to sincerely thank you all for sharing your stories and your experiences and your ideas. It's been a privilege to speak with you today. So I'll turn it back to Jackie. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Absolutely agree. Thank you to what a special panel. Thank you for your courage and generosity. Excuse me, sharing your lived experiences. It was yeah, a real privilege to hear from you all. Ça nous a vraiment touché. I think it's a good time to take a short break. So let's take a 10-minute break. Yeah, stretch your legs, stand up, grab a coffee, snack of choice, and come back and join us at 205 Atlantic, 105 in Ottawa, and we'll see you shortly. Welcome back, everyone. The next part of our agenda is a Slido engagement activity. I would like to first introduce Kristen Landry. Kristen is a Veteran Service Team Manager in the Halifax office. Her and I have worked together for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and there are a few things that stand out. Her total obsession with the holiday season, which annoyingly starts around Labor Day. Her ability to just show up. If you have a wild idea, Kristen will ask you what time you need her to be there. And most importantly, her commitment to making spaces welcoming for all. So, Kristen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone today and to be a part of something so great and so important. So I'm very happy to be here and thank you very much. As Jackie said, my name is Kristen Landry and I'm a Veteran Service Team Manager from Halifax in the area office. I'm sitting here today in Nova Scotia. My pronouns are she, her, or elle. I'm really pleased to be your section moderator for today as one of the co-hosts of the forum. I recognize the importance of having frequent opportunities for discussion and input from veterans with lived experiences. In today's session, you'll have the opportunity to tell us more about your lived experiences and the barriers you may face. We want you to know that your participation is important and valued, as well as entirely voluntary and completely confidential. All of your answers will remain anonymous, but we want to stress it is important to not include any personal or identifiable information on your answers. So please enter your answers on Slido. To access Slido, please visit the link in the chat or go to slido.com and join with hashtag 2023 forum. And finally, now it's your turn. We invite you to participate in the short polls via Slido. Okay, so our first question, I'll give you a couple of minutes here just in case you are not as quick or tech savvy. Also a trick as well, I did test it. If you take your camera out, if you have an iPhone and put it onto the QR code, it should bring up the link as well. All right, our first question to begin. We'd like to get to know you just a little bit better. So where are you joining us from today? Your answers, when you put them in, should form a word cloud. Okay. There we go. We've got lots of answers coming in now. We've got, seems like quite a few from Ottawa. There's Charlottetown. We've got Vancouver on the other side, Labrador City. Hopefully it's not too cold there today. Let's see, we've got Winnipeg, Sudbury, Newmarket, Hamilton, Fredericton. Seems like a lot of people from Ottawa and Charlottetown, so that's excellent. St. John, New Brunswick, Quebec, Montreal. Kingston. Oh, we've got some people in USA as well. Welcome, everyone. Good. Halifax. That's great. It's nice to see lots of representation from across the country and really across the world. So thank you today for joining us. Still lots coming in here. Give you a couple of about 10, 15 more seconds to put your answers in there if you haven't already, or if in case you're still trying to join us. London, perfect. All right, we'll move on to the second question. What is your energy level like today? How are you feeling? So you can go on in and go into the second. Are you feeling good, poor, fair? I mean, I know it's a hard time of year with how cold it's been and lots of snow, some seasonal fatigue. I get that after Christmas especially. There could be lots of things going on to your personal life as well. So, I mean, definitely just be open and honest and tell us how you feel. Good, see your answers coming in there. All right. And of course, no matter how you feel, always reach out to friends and family, or if you have EAP or the back assistance line as well. There's lots of supports there for people who this time of year or any time of year that might need them. All right, and we'll move on to our third question. So this is our last one, our last warm-up question. What words come to mind when you think about diverse veteran identities? We have heard a lot about the values of understanding, including and recognizing the history of diverse veteran identities today. Inclusivity, unseen. Inclusive, that seems to be a big one for everyone. Empathy, relief, untapped potential. Gender difference. Vulnerable, a great one. Opportunity, for sure. This is a great place for us to be able to express that and have the opportunity to be able to show lots of the lived experiences that are happening. Necessity to include, inequities, unrecognized, women, multi-layered, for sure. That's definitely a good one as well. Lots of great words going in there. Thank you to those who are participating. Evolving. That's excellent. This is great. I'm happy to see just a wide variety of participation so far. So thank you again for joining us. So the next section of the Slido poll will speak directly about the systemic barriers and Veterans Affairs. If this content is triggering to you, please feel free to step away from the event for the next 30 minutes, give or take, and rejoin whenever you're able to. Please note that all your responses are anonymous as well. So I'll move on to question 4. So where VAC has made the most progress addressing what we've heard from the past forums, what you can choose multiple answers here. What we're looking for in this area is what you feel we've made the most progress in. So accessing and awareness for programs and services, improving transition services, health and well-being, research, collaborating with key stakeholders, recognition, communication, and outreach, GBA+. Give you a few minutes here to be able to get your answers in as well. And of course, this is always very important for us to be able to take back from this. Improving transition services seems to be a major one for sure. Collaborating with key stakeholders. Great. Thank you everyone for being able to participate with this. So for our next upcoming questions, we have text questions coming up. We're going to keep your responses hidden to ensure that we are protecting your privacy and ensure the appropriate code of conduct during the event. So just because your responses are not shown today doesn't mean that it will not be reviewed. The content from Slido will go back towards our event report. We'd just like to remind you again that your responses are anonymous and to refrain from including any of your personal or identifiable information in Slido. So our 5th question. In 1 ou 2 mois, quel est selon vous le principal défi à relever pour éliminer les obstacles systémiques? So just 1 or 2 words, just like what you think the major challenge with removing systemic barriers might be. So I'll read some of the ones that are kind of standing out to me. There's lots of great things coming in here. So again, thank you. So resistance to change, acceptance from all, recognition, identifying barriers, there's a ton of rich content coming out of this, and thank you very much again. Definitely see there's a lot of people who have similar feelings, so it's good that we can take this back. All right. Give you a couple more minutes. I see a couple of people are still typing, so. Stigma, equity versus equality, accepting. It's good. Thank you. So we'll move on to our sixth question here. Question 6, you can select multiple options in this poll. I suggest it be important for you to tell us 1 or 2 of these places that we need to focus the most on. So where does VAC need to focus future efforts to improve equity and inclusion? So again, accessing and awareness for programs and services, improving transition services, health and well-being, research, collaborating with key stakeholders, recognition, communication, and outreach, GBA+. And I know a lot of this was touched on in some of our panelists and some of our senior leadership as well. So I'm sure we'll see some common themes here. We're going to use this and the information that was provided today in order to continue to make these services and some of these things better for the future. So it's important that you are sharing this with us today. All right. The accessing awareness for programs and services, it's a big one. And a couple of the other ones would be research, definitely. Health and well-being. See some of them changing here. It's good. It's definitely the ones that you've mentioned that we need to focus more of our effort on, and we can draw on, some of the things that, Stephen said and the general about, trying to make that more accessible for people, and just the awareness of, as we're beginning to get more research come through, to be able to make that better for people who are coming in and sharing their stories and their lived experiences, and trying to be more inclusive. So thank you. Okay. So the seventh Slido poll. Our next question talks about where you may have experienced systemic barriers with Veterans Affairs. Systemic barriers can be policies, practices, or procedures that result in some people receiving unequal access or being excluded. A systemic barrier can happen when the practices or policies in place are based in bias that discriminates against an individual. This can screen people out from participation or make their participation harder. So your answers will be anonymous and voluntary. If you feel you've not experienced systemic barriers, please do not answer this question. You can also select multiple options in this poll. So let us know where you've experienced your systemic barriers. So finding information related to underrepresented veterans, communicating with VAC staff and underrepresented veterans, access to grants or programs that focus on the needs of underrepresented veterans, participating in research about underrepresented veterans, or lack of understanding or biases regarding the history of underrepresented veterans' military experiences. See some of your answers there. So a lack of understanding or biases regarding the history of underrepresented veterans with military experiences. So that seems to be a big one there. Finding information related to underrepresented veterans. Great. Okay. And I will move on to our eighth question. Okay, and what goals will demonstrate SPAC commitment to equity? So this is another open text question where we'll be keeping responses private to ensure your privacy, but we're interested in hearing from you about what real change looks like. So for example, we've heard today about the modernization of entitlement eligibility guidelines, so EEGs, and the table of disabilities. We've heard about the work done to increase turnaround times for female veterans, as well as the francophone veterans. So these are just some of the tangible goals that help us demonstrate progress. So what other goals do you feel will demonstrate VAC's commitment to equity? I'll just give you a few minutes here to make sure that you can get your answers in. So see women's specific health research and program eligibility. We've got seek out and hire members of the 2ELGBTQI plus community and make them visible and approachable. Developing a strategy and action plan for change. Proactive communication, inclusion of more voices, willingness to active listen. Modernization of policy and programs. Gender specific, service specific. We've got lots of great things coming through. So thank you. Got some more people still typing here. So we'll give you, this is a long one, so we'll give you some time to be able to answer this. peer support programs. Great. More resources dedicated to areas that focus on underrepresented groups. It's good. And just a reminder, just because I haven't gone through everyone, we've got a lot of great answers, but these will be kept and we'll be able to go through them after the form is finished. Okay. And we'll move on to our ninth question. Is there anything that you feel strongly about that we've missed? We hope that our veterans and their families and stakeholders recognize that this is only just the beginning of our conversation. And we know that we might have covered everything today, but we hope that these answers will help us from future forums as well to help shape the work that VAC does. We've got BIPOC, evolving nature of identity, having more conferences in the ways of communication, accessing treatments and programs in locations with limited access, definitely. Give you a few more minutes here. Reaching out to veterans that don't have use of social media. A lot of great answers here, so thank you.
Kristen, we're making really good time. So if you want to keep reading some of the responses.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just being nosy because I can't actually see them as they're coming in. So maybe others in the audience are just as curious as I am.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's still people writing, so I'll give people the chance, especially when it's some of the longer text ones.
Sure.
I don't want to cut people off, definitely.
Sure.
We'd like to see more work to identify trends, risk issues that need to be flagged to the CAF with help to prevention of injury and illness for the next generation. How is VAC collaborating with the CAF in delivering of restorative engagement components? Having focused on more ethnic, cultural, and regional diversity issues. Reducing the number of time veterans have to tell their story. Sometimes, like each time it hurts. So definitely, thank you.
So I wonder, Kristen, if maybe some individuals who might have had some technical hiccups accessing the Slido, if they're if they wish, I encourage them to put some of the responses in the Q&A as well, if that might be easier for them, if they're sort of if they're like me, like that one channel maybe for the meeting. Feel free to do that as well if that's better for you.
No, that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Jackie. Inclusion, here's a couple more responses. Inclusion of senior CF members into VAC positions. RCMP, veteran representation on some of the panels. We'd like to see more options for preventative treatments. Intersectionality of identity.
I am seeing some additional info in the some typing in the Q&A. So I feel like my admission of my my love of one channel maybe opened up the gates a little bit there. So encourage people to continue to pop those into the Q&A if that's helpful.
We have some recognition and awards to underrepresented veteran communities. I know there's still people typing as well, so. Let's see.
There was a lot of questions for this Slido segment, Kristen. I'm wondering maybe since we have a bit of time, maybe if we can not necessarily ask people to go back to the beginning for their to add in additional responses, but maybe go back and just do a little bit of a reminder about the questions, and if people want to again just reflect on them, maybe especially too. I feel like I'm asking people to do homework, but maybe just reflect on them for next week as well. And yeah, I think that word cloud actually is grew a little bit since we came back after a little break.
Yeah, so for those of you who may have had some tech difficulties or didn't have a chance to put your answer in there, you can see the word cloud is kind of popped up again. So, you know, what word comes to mind when you think about diverse veteran identities, and you can kind of see it here. So in case you're unfamiliar with Slido, the more people who put in similar words like equity, it kind of grows a little bit bigger. So you can see some people have similar answers. You've got inclusivity, inclusive. You can see lots of really good answers in there. So thank you. Evolving, important, changing, strong. The next question again. So where, oh, sorry. No, we can go back to the next one. So where's VAC made the most progress addressing what we've heard from in past forums? You can see the answers here that have kind of popped up. So collaborating with key stakeholders. That's a big one. So recognition, communication outreach, gender-based analysis, GBA, improving transition services, health and well-being, research, collaborating with key stakeholders. Yeah, so it's good. Thank you. So again, if you needed to, you know, put your answers in there. Check out one of the next slides. We've got a couple of minutes again, in case people want to. In 1 or 2 words, what do you think is the major challenge with removing systemic barriers? So I can, again, we'll read off some of these. One of the bigger words on my end is resistance to change. That seems to be a pretty common one. So it's definitely one of the things that, you know, needs some work. It's got, again, so healthcare jurisdictions, identifying the barriers, stigma, justice. Power imbalance, lack of research. I see there are some people that want to add things in there, so please do.
Some of the feedback, Kristen, some of the responses that you're receiving, I find they're like really speaking to the panel we had just before the break. A lot of the concepts that the panelists spoke of in terms of collaboration with VAC and, you know, demystifying stereotypes. And, you know, I really, some of these words are really resonating with me, harkening back to that panel.
Yeah, it's good. You're right, Jackie. It's true. It's the panel, I'm glad, had a lot of really good information and a lot of, I guess, lived experiences and ways to change. And so I'm happy to see, I guess, in some ways that there are some obviously good work that has been done and still work to be done. So it's hopefully we'll be able to take some of these words and the recommendations from people who are here joining us today and continue to push forward. All right, I think everyone had the chance to answer there again, but we can move on to the next one. We've got a couple more minutes, so. And again, so where does VAC need to focus future efforts to improve equity and inclusion? You can see one of the bigger ones there. So accessing and awareness for programs and services, and then research, health and well-being, recognition, communication, and outreach, collaborating with key stakeholders, which. A few changes there, people changing their answer. Or adding answers. All right. And we will move on to the next one, see if there's anything else that people want to add or have the chance to be able to answer. So if you have experienced systemic barriers, where have you faced those? So big one seems to be a lack of understanding or bias regarding the history of underrepresented veterans military experiences. And finding information related to underrepresented veterans, communicating with VAC staff as an underrepresented veteran, and access to grants or programs that focus on the needs of underrepresented veterans as well. And yeah, it's good. Thank you for being able to provide those answers to us. We'll go to the next one. And so what goals will demonstrate VAC's commitment to equity? So we'll go through a few more of these. I see a couple people typing again. So consider research from other countries. Access to minority-specific health needs and transition, so women, trans, ethnic minorities, etc. That all veterans see themselves in VAC programs, services, and their providers. Good. Understanding consequential injuries, culture training and research. Thank you. These are really good answers. So thank you for providing those. I know sometimes these are not all that easy to do, but we appreciate you sharing your answers with us today. So designated funding and research on women and 2ELGBTQI+ veterans. Good. And we'll open up maybe the last question again one more time, and then we can wrap up the Slido portion. So is there anything that you feel strongly that we've missed? We've got a couple people writing, and then should be good here. Let's see, we've got health organizations who serve veterans to ensure their programming is inclusive so that we're all serving the community in the best possible way. Okay. Good. Still a few people putting your answers in. I'll give you a couple more minutes here. That's good. There's a lot of great information in there. So again, thank you very much. Leveraging and sharing data between D&D, CAF, and VAC. All right, well, thank you for that. So looking at Slido as well as the Q&A, like Jackie has mentioned, we did receive quite a bit of responses, but where VAC has improved, and obviously the work that we have left to do to achieve the equity. So I know this is just the beginning, and Jackie, we look forward to hearing from more veterans, I guess, from Veterans Affairs, D&D, CAF, on where the differences can make a difference. So again, thank you all so very much for sharing your experiences and your thoughts and expertise and everything related to addressing systemic barriers.
Thanks, Kristen. And I'll take a moment here to also thank the planning committee for the really good questions. And I think they're very practical in terms of how those responses can be, integrated in the department going forward. So we really appreciate you taking the time to plan those questions. And Kristen, thank you for moderating the Slido and the mental gymnastics of reading and relaying information. Okay, we're gonna take a moment to transition to our next agenda item. But before we do, again, just want to take a moment to thank the audience for their participation. The Slidos literally don't work if you don't participate, so we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, so so far today we have heard from Veterans Affairs, we've heard from veterans who've shared their lived experience about why facets of veteran identities like gender, age, sexual orientation, race and ethnicity, indigeneity, and many more play a significant role in how veterans experience the world, including the challenges that they might face. So we know it's important to understand that veteran identities are about more than just these facets. Veteran identities are also shaped by shared ways of seeing the world, and experiences in service play a prominent role in defining who veterans are. The Forum for Women and 2S LGBTQI+ veterans is an opportunity to demonstrate that our differences make a difference. Women veterans and 2S LGBTQI+ veterans break the mold, challenge stereotypes of who a veteran is. Each veteran has their own distinct set of challenges and their own experiences that have shaped their needs. So this is this next segment of day one of this forum is really special. We are going to hear from veterans. We're going to hear a little bit more from veterans in their own words about their veteran identities. And Kristen, I think you're going to set the rest of the afternoon up for us. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. All right, so I am lucky enough to lead this last presentation of the forum. This presentation is particularly important to me because I believe it is the importance of building empathy and community, and because the stories we tell can serve as both mirrors and windows of the diverse range of human experiences. So I believe the stories that we tell offer a powerful opportunity to build community and push back against bias and stereotypes. The concept of identity is complex, multidimensional, and fluid. As veterans, we know that the answer to who I am depends on a range of factors. So how do you define yourself? How are you or how have you been defined? Whether you feel included or excluded from the concept of a veteran or a serving member, and how others in individuals or society define you. We know that identities can influence your sense of who you are, how you perceive and treat others, and how others perceive and treat you. Our differences make a difference. Understanding and recognizing those differences is at the heart of our work in this forum. So with that in mind, VAC is interested in broadening our recognition of our diverse identities. We want to build up our catalog of stories, especially the stories of underrepresented veterans. Today, we're just beginning this conversation by sharing brief quotes, stories, and interviews with a wide range of women and 2S LGBTQI+ veterans on why their identities matter. But by going forward, VAC is interested in making a concerted effort to share the full stories of veterans and 2S LGBTQI+ veterans by building on our current resources. From commemoration content to our communications on the programs and services we provide, VAC is looking to increase the diversity of veteran stories. Over the past several months, Veterans Affairs Canada engaged a group of external representatives made up of diverse women veterans and 2SLGBTQI+ veterans, stakeholders, groups, researchers to work as part of our forum planning group and to help guide the direction on this series, as well as to help shape future forum goals. Our forum planning group members told us about the importance of being able to tell your story and feeling heard. One veteran in particular spoke about participating in an activity called a living library, which aims to make individual experiences more widely available by having conversations that challenge prejudice and discrimination. The hope of the Living Library are that in learning about other people and their experiences, we challenge our own views and ideas, creating a vibrant, inclusive society. Today, we will be sharing a handful of brief stories that Veterans Affairs recently collected specifically for the forum. While these stories begin to scratch the surface of the stories that women veterans and 2SLGBTQI+ veterans must tell, we're also hoping that they act as a catalyst to tell more stories and help us begin to make the invisible visible. Women veterans and 2SLGBTQI+ veterans have important, distinct stories to tell, and Veterans Affairs recognizes the need for culturally diverse stories that share the perspectives and lived experiences of veterans whose gender, race, culture, sexual orientation, religion, language, and traditions have shaped the way that they live their lives today. We asked our storytellers to reflect on 3 questions. And if you're interested in sharing your reflections with Veterans Affairs, please do so in the Q&A box. And feel free to submit your reflections anonymously. Please make sure, though, that you have not included any personal or identifying information in your response. Our first question is, what story do I want to tell about who I am and my service? When we asked veterans, what story do I want to tell about who I am and my service, they mentioned a variety of things, how empowering their experience was, and how the structure of military provided clarity, but also how facets of their identities shaped their experiences. One veteran mentioned, I think there must have been about 30 of us females and about 3,000 men. There was a lot of pressure. We've also heard about those facets of identity impacted what veterans thought about could be achieved. One veteran assumed that being pregnant in the military would result in not having much of a role, as well as the veterans thought how they could be recognized. Another veteran felt that their accomplishments were not recognized until much later in their career. We reached out to a few veterans that were interested in telling us more about why their identity was important. One who answered the call was Enick. Enick de Rocher est actuellement fonctionnaire au ministère de Défense nationale à Ottawa en tant que spécialiste de l'éducation ancienne du groupe de transition des forces armées canadiennes. So prior to this, she spent 15 years in the Canadian Armed Forces as a maritime officer and a training development officer. When not working, Anna can be found with her wife, Christine, and their 2 young children, enjoying cycling, hiking, and traveling.
Good morning. Thank you for participating in this event. I would like to have your perspective on the following questions. What story do I want to tell about who I am and my service as a military member? And secondly, what matters to me now as a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces?
Bonjour, je suis capitaine à la retraite Hélène Leseller, vétérane des Forces armées canadiennes. J'aimerais partager avec vous l'histoire pour laquelle j'ai joint les Forces armées canadiennes. En 1990, on était à la recherche de femmes pour joindre les armes de combat. Pour moi, c'était un défi énorme à rencontrer et c'est ce qui m'a apporté à joindre les Forces armées canadiennes. J'ai servi 26 ans dans les Forces armées canadiennes et c'est une carrière que je ne regretterai jamais. Il y a eu des hauts, il y a eu des bas. J'ai vécu l'Afghanistan, je suis revenue blessée de l'Afghanistan, mais somme toute, c'est une carrière que j'ai adorée et appréciée et encore aujourd'hui, je servirai encore. Ce qui est important pour moi aujourd'hui en tant que vétérane, c'est qu'on doit parler de l'histoire des vétérans modernes. Quelque chose que souvent on a passé sous silence. Alors aujourd'hui, ce qui est important pour moi, c'est de faire en sorte que les histoires rayonnent, rejoignent nos jeunes, rejoindre des personnes qui, en fait, ne savaient pas ce qu'était en fait un vétéran pour les Forces armées canadiennes. Aujourd'hui, on peut servir outre-mer, on peut servir à l'intérieur du pays et c'est important de raconter, en fait, tout ce qui se passe dans une carrière pour nos militaires. Donc, merci beaucoup.
Just want to make sure that everyone is hearing me okay.
You are good, Kristen.
Thank you so much. All right. So our second question we asked veterans was, what matters to me now as a veteran? If you're interested in sharing your reflections with Veterans Affairs, please do so in the Q&A box. And feel free to submit your reflections anonymously. Make sure you've not included any personal or identifying information in the response. So veterans interviewed previously by VAC have answered this question in the past, calling out that transitioning can be a distinct challenge for women and 2SLGBTQI+ veterans. One where individual strategies that speak to your unique needs are critical to success. Veterans also noted that the past harms that upended lives cannot just be painted over, and that no two people experience the same event, the same discrimination, the same challenges in the same way. We also received some longer submissions, which I'd like to read. The first submission is An Accidental Servicewoman to Empowered Veteran by Rosemary Park. So 50 years ago, and nearing the end of my grade 13 high school year, I heard 3 distinguished Canadians who were members of the Committee for an Independent Canada speak at a high school assembly on how Canada had lost its independence, economically, culturally, and militarily. It was all I needed to hear. I decided to join the Canadian Armed Forces to protect my country. The professionalism of the recruiting staff that May 1972 at Canadian Armed Forces Recruiting Centre, Toronto, impressed me. I thought it odd to be told the Canadian Armed Forces had a great pension plan. No matter, I was joining to defend Canada. I thought it strange there were only 4 officer classifications open for women to join. Again, no matter, military service was exactly the future I wanted. Turned down by National Defence Headquarters, I learned many years later that the Canadian Forces Regular Training Officer Training Plan, Civilian University Entry Program, was not even open to women. One day, I will track down Canadian Forces policy documents held at the Library and Archives Canada, explaining why Canadian Forces Recruiting Centre Toronto staff even looked at my application. 5 months later, and the Regular Officer Training Plan Civilian University was open. I was allowed to enroll. I was given my back pay to September of my university first year. What a great employer, I thought. But for naive idealism, obvious lack of career planning at the age of 17, and being a woman in Canadian Armed Forces, I was set. Our second submission is an excerpt from The Red Wall, A Woman in the RCMP by Jane Hall. For those first few days and weeks of recruit field training with the RCMP, I stayed comfortably in the background of my male counterparts. Complainants were comfortable talking to men. When they called the police, they expected a male officer to arrive. There were a few puzzled glances cast my way, but overall, I remained quite invisible. I was not even close to the public's perception of a Mountie. I was small and female, and though I was 23, I looked like a teenager. I did not mind watching and learning during those first few days. By the second week, it was clear it was my turn to handle a few routine inquiries. My male partner dwarfed my size. He was the personification of the public's expectation of what a Mountie should look like. He proved so distracting to many people, they seemed to barely notice me. Your turn to do the talking, he said, after we were assigned a routine call. He parked in front of the modest bungalow and then stood out of sight at the very corner of the steps as I knocked on the front door. In short order, the door was cracked open by a well-dressed woman in her mid-70s. I was about to speak when she called to her husband sitting on the couch behind her. "Dear, the Girl Guides are here." The situation only deteriorated as the other member added to the confusion by bursting into laughter. Bringing himself to the woman's attention for the first time and causing her to look at him, the police car parked at the curb and then back to me. "You're not from the Girl Guides?" Trying to salvage my dignity, I had just introduced myself as Constable Greenwood when her husband arrived at the door, $2 in hand, for the purchase of the cookies. My partner fell off the step into the flower bed at this point. The poor old couple was very apologetic when the matter was finally cleared up. Like the majority of the general public, they'd never heard of a female peace officer. Now I'd like to introduce Hélène Le Seller, who generously offered to share her story with us. So Hélène Le Seller understands the difficulties that some soldiers must overcome both during and after their military service. She wore the uniform for 26 years, lost 2 comrades in Afghanistan. She is currently finishing her doctoral studies in social work, which involves examining members' experiences with identity transitions as they return to civilian life. She is a member of the Montagnais First Nation of Lac Saint-Jean.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annick Desrachers, and my pronouns are she, her, in French, elle. Today, we're talking about who we are in terms of veterans. And so I am a woman, cisgendered. I am a veteran of 15 years. I was a maritime officer and a training development officer. And within those 15 years, I enjoyed so much of my serving, my experiences, the people that I got to know. To me, it was a positive experience. And so as a veteran, I sometimes struggle with my own identity when it comes to a veteran. And it's to the point where my partner has to remind me of the various benefits that we are allowed to have or that we benefit from as a veteran in terms of recognition. And so sometimes I forget that I'm a veteran because I don't consider myself worthy enough. Hence why my partner reminds me of that. Whether that be, I didn't go on any deployments. I went through my training and changed occupations and did the best of my ability, but I don't have any medals besides the CD. And so to me, it is challenging to consider myself as a woman veteran. And I think that's important, that this struggle is it's real. It's something that we think about when we have an opportunity to identify ourselves as a veteran.
All right. So the last question that we asked veterans was, what challenges arise when others view me differently from how I view myself as a veteran? So if you're interested in sharing your reflections with Veterans Affairs, please do so in the Q&A box, and feel free to submit your reflections anonymously. So again, please make sure that you have not included any of your personal or identifying information in your responses. So we have heard from veterans previously that when diverse veteran identities are not accepted, when their histories are not acknowledged, and when they are not recognized for their unique perspectives, experiences, and challenges, that veterans can feel excluded, shamed, or like they aren't real veterans. We've heard in the past from veterans that fight to be recognized as a veteran when they do not fit into the stereotypes, and that can be demoralizing, which is why continuing to challenge the stereotypes is so important. We know that not all veterans look the same or had the same experiences, and that veterans span all ages, races, ethnicities, cultures, genders, expressions, sexual orientations, and other experiences. Lastly, we want to share a story from Todd Ross to speak a little about his identity. Todd Ross, he is a Métis Two-Spirit veteran. He was one of 3 representative plaintiffs in the class action lawsuit brought on behalf of the current and former federal public service employees who suffered a purge campaign targeting 2SLGBTQI+ employees. He now lives in St. Andrew, New Brunswick, and he is the Indigenous advisor at the St. John campus of the University of New Brunswick.
Great. event. Nin Wabanakwat Nadishnikaz Magizi Nin Dodam, Duck Lake Onjaba Nukamus. I introduced myself as Todd Ross, and my spirit name is Wabanakwat. I'm a Métis two-spirit person. I go by the pronouns of he and him. I served in the Canadian Navy from December 1987 to June of 1990, and was part of the LGBT purge. So during that 2.5 years, I was under investigation for about 1.5 years of that. When I was released in 1990, it was an honorable discharge. However, I was told at the time that I would never be seen as a veteran. I was not a veteran, and that I should not approach veteran affairs. It took a long time. One, because I felt that even though it was an honorable discharge, I didn't feel any honor in my release. And it wasn't until I was working with the Métis elder who was also a veteran, and he approached me and said, I understand you served, and said, yes, but it's, there's a lot to it. And so I explained to him some of the circumstances and how, I didn't feel that I was a veteran and didn't feel that I had the right to call myself a veteran. And he immediately stopped me and said, a veteran is a veteran is a veteran. And so it was through the Métis Nation of Ontario Veterans Council that I first started to identify as a veteran. And this would have been probably around 2009, 2010. Fast forward, we had a group that came together, and I was one of the lead plaintiffs in the class action lawsuit, the LGBT Purge, where we had the chance to meet with other people who were released through similar circumstances who also didn't feel as part of the veteran community. So now part of what we do, I'm the co-chair of Rainbow Veterans of Canada, and part of what we're doing now is to help people regain that pride, that feeling in ourselves that we are veterans and that we have a piece in our history to be proud of for our service to the country. And now that we're starting to use the services at VAC and starting to build those relationships with other veterans that were kind of missing for a couple decades. But that's my experience, and that's how my introduction to reclaiming my identity as a veteran. Thank you.
We'd like to thank the veterans that shared their stories today for their dedication and commitment. We'd also like to encourage women and 2SLGBTQI+ veterans to continue to do so and have their voices heard. So if you're interested in sharing your story, reach out to the forum event team and let us know that you're interested. You can join the VAC committee on Let's Talk Veterans to have your say on issues related to all veterans and their families. And again, thank you to those who shared your reflections in the Q&A. These reflections, like all the information that we've collected today through the event, will help you take back and shape the reports and other events and this type of thing, this type of forum, I guess, in the future. So again, thank you so much, and we appreciate all that you've done. Jackie?
Thank you, Kristen, and thanks again to our virtual audience and veterans for sharing your incredible lived experiences and personal reflections today. Just a reminder before we move on, for those of you who need to speak with someone, the VAC assistance line is available to you at 1-800-268-7708. This is a confidential and free service that's available 24/7 and allows you to speak to a mental health professional right now. I'm going to turn it over and to our boss. I'm pleased to introduce Paul Ledwell, Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs. Au sein de l'organisation, Paul a été un ardent défenseur de la diversité et de l'inclusion, continuant de prendre des mesures pour rendre ACC plus accessible et inclusif, à la fois en tant qu'employeur et en tant que fournisseur de services. So, turn over to you, Paul.
Merci, Jackie. Et merci tout le monde pour vos contributions aujourd'hui. Thank you, everyone, for joining today and for contributing today. And I know you'll contribute again next week. This is your forum. It's a forum for women and 2ELGBTQ plus, 2QI plus. It's your forum, and it's very important that we hear your contributions, your reflections, your advice, and your direction. It's wonderful that we can gather again and that we can connect again on these issues. And again, I know we look forward to continuing these discussions and these considerations next week. I particularly want to underline, as others have said, and to thank the veterans who have come forward with courage and with clarity and have shared their perspectives and their stories. I know it's not always easy to reflect on discrimination that you have suffered during your career or challenges that you continue to face as women and 2ELGBTQI plus veterans. Toutefois, le fait que vous raconterez vos expériences nous aide certainement à mieux comprendre des aspects de la vie des vétérans que nous n'avions peut-être pas pleinement pris en compte. Nous vous remercions de votre franchise et de la différence que vous faites pour tous les vétérans en racontant vos histoires. Sharing your stories, sharing your perspectives, sharing that with others, sharing that with us is incredibly important. And I can assure you that I and many of my colleagues at Veterans Affairs Canada have been hearing and listening very intently. And our commitment is to respond, to act, to adjust, and to work with you as we continue to improve the lives of veterans from underrepresented and diverse groups. We share a commitment to address and overcome the challenges that have at times made it more difficult for people from underrepresented groups to be properly served by our department. And I'd like to thank all of you for your contributions, for the clarity that you have provided, and again, underline our commitment to answer those suggestions and those directions that you have brought forward today and will continue to bring forward. Our goal really is to keep moving forward in a way that allows us to best meet the evolving demands and needs of all veterans from the perspectives and the very diverse perspectives that you all share. So once again, I'd like to thank you all for your contributions. Thank the veterans. I loved hearing directly and live from Christine, from Stephen, from Martine, and from Tila, and from others who share their stories here today. And I know that we've heard stories. We need to continue to hear these stories, to share these stories, and to reflect that in the work and the leadership that we provide. What we heard today and what we'll hear next week on day 2 of the forum will keep shaping our approaches to veteran care. And again, I'd like to thank you for all that. I'd particularly like to thank all those who organized today, the forum planning group, our moderators, and others who helped in the organization. Je vous souhaite une bonne journée, une bonne fin de semaine, et j'attends avec impatience les discussions qui continuent la semaine prochaine. And I know that we'll all continue to work together to really address and seriously address the issues that you are underlining and raising. Merci beaucoup. Je souhaite une bonne journée. Merci.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you to everyone for joining in today, your continued engagement over this virtual platform. Our next event, as we mentioned throughout the forum today, our next event is a week from today, next Thursday, February 16th, It's been a long time coming, and we are looking forward to seeing many of you in person in Ottawa next week. Merci pour tout ce que vous accomplissez pour soutenir les femmes vétérans et les vétérans 2ELGBTQI+, et leurs familles. Thank you for all you do to support women and 2ELGBTQI+ veterans and their families. We will see you next week. And until then, stay well.